So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the November 12th, 2024 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. Commission members are appointed by the Select Board to implement the rules and regulations of the State Wetlands Protection Act, as well as the town bylaw governing the wetlands. We've got two matters of formality. One is that we invite everyone to speak, ask questions, make comments. But we do ask that you identify yourself because of the record. This is being recorded, and as part of the open meeting law, we do need you to identify yourselves. The second matter of formality is we introduce ourselves. My name is John Kiernan on the Conservation Commission. Let me just go right across the top here. Steve, can you introduce yourself?
Steve Ivis, Conservation Agent for the Commission.
Philip, can you?
Philip Driscoll, Conservation Clerk.
Okay. Arthur Doyle?
Arthur Doyle, Conservation Commission member.
Hans Van Linken?
Yep, I'm Hans Van Linken, Commission member.
And Tom Palmer?
Tom Palmer, Commission member.
And I don't know if I see everybody on my screen. I think that's all we have for commission members, but we do have a quorum, so we're ready to proceed. First on the agenda is Wentworth Farm it says peer review, but this is actually, our consultant is under Chapter 44, Section 53G, which is not a peer review, but it is a consultancy in which the Conservation Commission has attempted to reach out to get expertise in an area that we thought we needed assistance in. And for the public, the cost of that consultant is paid for by the applicant. And I do see, well, Ned, do you want to speak? Because I'm not sure that we have all the plans that we had requested at our September meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to, if I could, for the record, Ned Corcoran, on behalf of Jordy Strom and Bess Cutter, they are the owners of the property at 24 Wentworth Farms Road. We were last before the commission.
Ned, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
I apologize, but for record-keeping purposes, because it is an open meeting and we have another commissioner, Wendy, could you introduce yourself, please? Yeah, you're still on mute. There you go.
My apologies. My name is Wendy Garpo. I'm a very regretful and tardy commissioner. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
You are officially forgiven.
Thank you. My apologies, Ned.
Thank you for
Not
being
at
here.
all. Not at all.
Ned, go back. I'm sorry.
So we were before the commission at the September meeting, September 10. At that time, my understanding is that we were charged with retaining separate engineer, consulting engineer, to do a couple of things. One, to calculate the total of the impervious area that was draining into the Cultec system from both the roof and the driveway, and to propose additional infiltration and other measures to handle that stormwater flow. And the second was to look at wall modification for the large stone retaining wall that holds the septic system from outside of the wetland area. We have retained Jim Burke. I'm expecting Jim to be here tonight. Jim has done a preliminary analysis of the volume capacity, or of the volume of the area of the impervious, and he has come up with a preliminary recommendation for modifications to the Cultec system. He's proposing that we essentially double the size of the Cultec system with some form of level spreader to handle any overflow from the Cultec system. He has not yet looked closely at the wall replacement. He didn't really get going on this until a couple of weeks ago. He delivered a preliminary plan and letter to me late last week. My client was overseas at a conference, and so I didn't have a chance to review it with him until this morning. I shared it with Steve Ivis and Deb Keller late this morning. I spoke with each of them to walk through it, and I understand that Jim has spoken with Deb, but we are in a preliminary, as I say, it's a preliminary recommendation that I think, and Deb and Steve can speak for themselves, but I think gets at what the goal of the commission is relative to adequately handling the volume of stormwater discharge coming from the roof and from the driveway. Assuming that the commission agrees that it's going in the right direction, we would like permission to actually go and install the additional Caltech chambers while the weather is good. And before we're benefiting right now from a drought, I suppose, in this case, because we're not getting any water draining into the system. But we would like the ability to go ahead and expand it. We'll finalize the plans associated with that and have them ready for presentation in December. And then at the same time, we'll have a recommendation to the board from Jim Burke as to what improvements to make to the wall itself. We'll review those obviously with Deb and with Steve and look forward to discussing those recommendations, whatever they may be, when we arrive at the December meeting. I don't know if Jim is on the call. I understood he was going to be to discuss this proposal, but if not, I would request whether Deb or Steve could comment, and then we can move forward from there. I apologize for the delay, for failing to get materials to the commission in time for this meeting, but as I said, we just did have it at the end of last week, and I tried to make it available as soon as I could to Steve and to Deb.
Great, thanks, Ned. Deb, do you have anything to add? I know it's fresh information to you.
Yeah, so thank you, Deb Keller with Merrill Engineers and Land Surveyors. As Ned mentioned, I did speak with Ned and Jim Burke this afternoon. He went over the intent and of the analysis, which is exactly what they said. He from the information he had, he calculated out the square footage of the additional runoff being collected on the driveway that's being tied in. He ran a HydroCAD. I have not seen the study yet. I think he was waiting to finalize that. But basically said with doubling the size of the system to 4 chambers would handle up to a 2-year storm before overflow. And so that would attenuate the increase in impervious that would be added to that system. So it all sounds like the right process to go through. I would just like to see the calculations when Jim has completed them.
Well, let me ask you this. There have been comments from some of the commissioners that, the world is changing, and whether you refer to it as climate change or not, we're seeing a whole lot more rain coming. And a 2-year storm doesn't sound like the right standard to calculate the retention capacity. But that's not an engineering comment. That's sort of a layman's comment. 2-year storm doesn't sound like much.
Well, what you have to do when you have a new project, the goal or criteria through stormwater is that you meet existing conditions. So let's say this site has runoff prior to construction of 1 CFS you have 3 storms that technically per the state you need to look at, which is the 2, 10, and 100. So you look at each storm increment in existing conditions, and you need to match that. So you don't have to hold back all of the water unless, you have absolutely no water coming off the site. So in this case, I would anticipate that if they're holding the entire 2-year back, that will allow, yes, you'll have flow in the higher storms coming off of that, but that should compensate for what, meaning you'd be very close to the pre-condition. And that's what I'm saying when I'd like to see the HydroCAD once Jim is done with it, so that you can see those comparisons between the 2, 10, and 100. But from what I see,
I'm sorry, I think, John, from my lay perspective of the way Jim described it, that in addition to the Caltex, it would be a pretty robust additional level spreader system installed that would handle any additional outflow coming from the Caltex system during a higher intensity storm. Is that fair, Deb?
Yeah, what the level spreader would do is also help attenuate so that you don't create a point source discharge and create any erosion. So it spreads it out to try to maintain that sheet flow across the surface rather than, having it come right out of a pipe and create any type of erosion in that one focused area.
Right, I think that was our expectation. In fact, I think it was our request that we use a vertical pipe a horizontal pipe instead of the original plan, which had a vertical pop top, so to speak. And just end up pooling in the backyard.
What they've done though, in the plan, the goal would be is they still want to use the vertical pop tops, and then so the water would bubble out of the chambers and then maintain that level spreader or sheet flow off the site so that you're not creating a point source. Like if you had a horizontal pipe, then you would need to have an outlet and put in a riprap pad so that you could disseminate and slow down the water. In this case, they're just using a level spreader to do that same dissipation of the flow.
I don't know how you get across the backyard. We were all standing. In fact, Wendy was standing right next to me when we were looking at the channelization that resulted. That's
So that
a
would,
lot of water. We were standing there in a rainstorm.
so that's what we'd like to see in Jim's next detailed plan. I know he was out trying to get finalize the as-built plan. So, and I had mentioned to him that there were plantings along the edge of the lawn, and he said that's what he would work with those grades. Once he got that on, drafted on a plan, they would grade out that level spreader so that you wouldn't be running down that side slope.
How about, because we had and again, I'm a layman here, so I'll defer to everybody on this, but I thought we were talking about using a horizontal pipe to get it to the edge of the yard and then use the level spreader. And that would eliminate what we saw, the sheet flow across the backyard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned that to Jim, and that's what the past discussion was at the hearing, and that may come up this evening, the outflow. He says that he would prefer the level spreader, but he could, if that is what the board would like, he could design that as well. So it really is a preference. If the board would like to have a horizontal pipe with a riprap spillway, outlet splash pad, then he could design it that way. His preference in his experience is he prefers to do a level spreader as he's shown. As long as it doesn't create a point source discharge, then without having, again, the level spreader doesn't have the riprap that you're talking about, because you need that at the pipe outlet because you're creating a point source discharge. So you want to slow the water down and spread it out and allow it to flow off the site. But what I guess what I'm saying is, in my discussion with Jim this afternoon, I had mentioned that was part of our discussion at the last hearing. And he said, well, if they would prefer me to design it that way, I'm happy to design it that way. So if that's a preference, we could go back to Jim and just say that this is what the commission would like to see.
Again, this comes from ignorance, but it sounds like an either or proposition from what you've said. But I thought you could use the horizontal pipe to get it to the edge of the yard and then use a level spreader.
Yeah, I guess it's the detail in which your or definition of a level spreader. So when you have like here, it'd be a 4 or 6 inch pipe coming out of those chambers that you would be discharging, and with that, you'd have maybe a 4 or 5 foot sort of square riprap pad that's going to help you. First, it slows the water down, and then it allows it to disseminate on, all sides of that riprap out into or down gradient off and in towards the wetland. Whereas what he's looking at here, I mean, obviously I'm only looking at his discussion sketch, so it's not in full detail, is he's looking to put sort of a more of a level edge to the chamber system, and I'm guessing it's probably 15 or 16 feet long, knowing the length of each chamber. And that would be completely level, which would allow the water to flow over that, along that width and spread out rather than being at one single 4 or 6 inch pipe outlet.
If I can share a screen, I think I have the capacity to call up this draft plan.
Steve, can you help him out?
Yes, he should be able to do it now.
Okay. All I have to do is find it.
I have it up, Ned, if
Oh, you do?
want me to
Why don't
share.
you? Because I'm having trouble pulling it up. Thanks.
Okay. So,
Good.
how's that?
Yes,
That's
Yeah.
good, thanks.
Yeah. Kind of zoom in a little bit more here. Oops. So what I was trying to say is you can see between these, this limit here and here would be the level spreader, where once it comes up, bubbles out of the ground, or you have your pop-up openings here, they would then fill up. And I believe, this is where I'd like a little more clarification from Jim, but he sort of indicated that this was going to be a depression, and then it would fill up a little bit and then flow over down here. But instead of having sort of like a point discharge at one point with the pipe coming off the end, he's trying to spread that flow across that full length here and then down.
Is this? I'm having trouble with the diagram.
So there were
It's almost like the house has been rotated,
No, the house is the way it is.
because the way the driveway is coming down,
Mhm.
I thought that there was remember where the extra, or it was new to the original plans anyway. There was a catch basin, and it went around the side of the house and then into the back of the house.
Actually, John, the catch basin is right where the H in asphalt is,
yeah, right here.
and it outlets to the front door and comes around that way. There's a separate drain that captures much of the roof and goes around the other way, and they both discharge into the existing Caltech system. And
Which includes 2 chambers, and this is where Jim is looking to bump that up to 4.
Got it. Okay.
So what Jim had mentioned is this is just a quick sketch, so he does not have all of the as-built detail on it. So that's what he was working on, finalizing that, but he wanted to at least get this in front of you to show us what he thought would help attenuate the additional asphalt surface or impervious surface being added to this system.
All right, good. Well, if he does an as-built, just ask him to keep an eye on the elevations, because I think the elevations were incorrect on the last as-built that we saw.
they've gone out, John. They're doing an entirely new survey.
Okay, thanks.
They know they need accurate survey, because at the end of the day, they will have to apply for certificate of compliance, and we will need an accurate as-built plan to go with that. And so they are doing a full and complete survey of the property.
Good, okay. And is there any, I know it would be entirely preliminary, but I think we had asked for plans that would include, for the retaining wall. I'm shifting gears from the drainage system to the retaining wall. But is he working on that? Because we had asked for it to see a plan with at least some of the holes in the wall being plugged with pressurized concrete.
He is turning his attention to that. He hasn't yet really begun to drill into that detail. He wanted to get this work done on the preliminary plan for the Caltech systems.
Okay.
And we anticipate having a more detailed set of plans and recommendations for the commission's consideration in December.
Good, thank you. Steve, did you have any thoughts, comments?
No, I just like the idea of doubling the size of the Coltex. Gives you double the storage.
Got it.
Very simple.
All right, questions from commissioners? Abutters, members of the public? Hearing none, we'll continue this until, what's the date in December?
Should be December 10th.
John, may I
Yes.
ask a question? If it's,
Sure.
and this would be the sense of the commission. If it sounds like Deb and Jim at least agree that and Steve agree that doubling the size of the Caltech system is appropriate. Do you have any concerns if we were to get out and get that work going between now and the 10th, or do you want us to wait until after the 10th when you've had a chance to review a more detailed set of plans?
Well, I know personally, I'd like to see the plans. I don't know if others have a different view. I appreciate that doubling the size is good. I think that's what we were leaning towards in the past. I am a little concerned with planning, given all the 100-year storms we've had, planning for a 2-year storm. And I know what the performance standards are, that you're not supposed to increase the runoff. I got it. But if we're planning and we're planning for the future, and we had the same conversation as to the wall, and the reason that we needed that extra security of, plugging the wall, at least larger holes with concrete, was because we were looking to the future. With some of the rainstorms that we've enjoyed of late, there's a lot of water out there. And it seems to be, I know there isn't right now. I know we're in a drought. But I'd like to see the plans for that purpose. But if others have a different view, then so state. Tom, I know you're focused on the amount of rain, and what's your view?
I'm sort of drawing a blank. I think if we're going to change the performance standards on our own hook, we have to be consistent.
I'm not trying to change the performance standards. I'm just asking whether or not planning for a 2-year storm is sufficient. I know what the performance standards are. You can't increase the discharge. I got it. But sometimes it's like we add Caltech chambers to roof drains sometimes because it's not a big cost generally. And sometimes people can make better plans for the future, even though it may not be necessarily required. But I'm definitely not trying to change performance standards. I mean, they will change when they change.
Yeah, I see your point. I don't know. I'm sort of on the fence about it. One extra note. When we were there in the heavy rain and we were looking at the base of the boulders for any material that was coming out of the wall, I really didn't see any. It wasn't evident to me that anything was coming out except water. I'm not saying that I don't think it's a good idea to add this concrete, but I didn't see a existing problem.
I did, and I asked you to take a picture of it. I saw siltation.
I can
pointed it out
bring
to a
those up.
number of commissioners, including you, when
Yeah.
I asked you to take the photo.
Well, isn't it funny? We were both looking at the same thing and we saw something different.
Perhaps.
But I'm going to take a look at those pictures.
All right.
Mm.
All right. Well, I guess the only question is, do we need to wait for the plans? I would suggest that we do. Wendy, Hans, I see you nodding, Hans.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate, especially since Deb wants to check the calcs. I think that's also very important. So let's at a minimum get that. And yeah, ultimately I'd like to see a plan first before that's reviewed before we go ahead and give the okay to install it.
Arthur, Wendy?
I came out, John, the same place that Ian's just enunciated. I really want to see the plan.
Good, okay, Wendy?
Getting back to the level of storm that we would like to plan for. If I were the homeowner, I would look at it as cheap insurance. If assuming that the incremental cost of planning for, say, a 10-year storm or more is not significantly more expensive, I think that it makes a whole lot of sense.
I agree with you. And if it's cheap and doable, and it makes sense. But to Tom's point, I'm not trying to, bend the rules. I'm a strict constructionist. I'm just looking for what's practical. And as some people say, best management practices. Okay, so it looks like the consensus, Ned, is to wait for the plans.
That's fine.
All right. To be honest with you, and I always try not to slow people down. We may be having another, I'll call it unscheduled meeting, but it's probably going to be within a few days. So I'm not sure that would help you in terms of getting the plans done.
I agree. I don't think we'd be far enough along with respect to that. So I think we will look to the December meeting and be ready to go.
All right, good. Thanks. Well, with the assent of
We'll still have plenty of reasonable working conditions to install in December, so we'll be fine.
Good. Thanks, Ned.
All right. Happy
So with
Thanksgiving
the
on.
consent of the homeowner, we will continue this until December 10th. Thanks, Ned. Thanks, Deb. All right, next on the agenda is 102 Ferncroft Road. And this is a 2001 order of conditions, and the homeowner is seeking a certificate of compliance. Yes, is that
Hi, it's Kimberly and Philip Terry.
Hi, good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Tell us what you did and where you are and what you want. Yes.
So my husband and I at the time was Kimberly and David Moore. My parents were gracious enough to consider having us build an extension towards the back of the house, and our property abuts conservation land. So that's where our first stop was, to go ahead and get the WPA Form 5, the order of conditions, filled out before we could even really proceed with the architect. So we had that, we got approval. Things fell apart with the architect, so we never did anything. And truthfully, we forgot all about it, didn't really know that there was anything that was still binding towards it. Fast forward, 23 years, life has happened. My mom has since which passed. We're all 23 years older, and we're looking now to build a bedroom downstairs for my dad, so he doesn't have to, climb so many sets of stairs. And we were this close to our closing, and they made us aware of this outstanding certificate. So right now we're looking for a certificate of compliance that we can have and have it registered so that we can proceed with our closing.
I'm sorry, the closing, or you're selling the house?
No, sorry. We are renovating the house now, building an addition downstairs. So we're not changing the footprint whatsoever. The porch that's already on there, the den that's already on there, it will be converted into a bedroom, bathroom. And then we're building up on top of that. The work permit has already been granted. It's was granted a couple of weeks ago, so that's already been approved. And this was just not on the building side, but just for us securing a home equity loan.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
When I was looking at the paperwork, I noticed that there was no engineering plan, but my assumption from listening to the applicant is that there wouldn't be one, since the work for which this was submitted was never done.
Correct.
That's,
And the form so states. There's a
yes.
component on the form that says if the work was never done, check this box. No, I get that. I just didn't know if the new edition required a notice of intent.
No, because we're not changing the footprint whatsoever.
Okay. Understood. So you're building up?
Up. Changing what's already there and building up on top of it.
Okay. Do you know, Steve, do you know the site?
I do not know the site. I'm very sorry to say.
All right. I remember. I was there in 2001. I think I signed the order of conditions.
Yes, you
Um,
did.
Yeah. So I do recall it. But if you're not changing the footprint, you're not altering the land, then looks like you don't need a permit. And I did, Philip, I don't know if you've got the form in front of you, but I think there is a box that said the form was never, the renovation was never done.
Yes, I have the form in front of me. I see that.
Yeah, there it is. It is checked off as it is. The above referenced order of conditions has lapsed and is therefore no longer valid, and the
Right.
work regulated by it was never started. So that looks like the appropriate box. Are there any comments, questions by commission members? Don't hear any abutters, members of the public? Is there a motion to issue the certificate of compliance as
So
written?
moved.
Is there a second? Okay, Arthur moved, Wendy seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? We do it by individual vote. Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
Hans,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
and I, John Kiernan, vote yes as well. So you've got your certificate of compliance. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Good to see you
Great.
after we'll meet every 23 years.
There you go. There you go.
All right.
Can I just ask just the technical aspect of it? When can I pick it up?
Well, it's a good question. Philip has it. We've all got it here. The trick is to get people to go up to the DPW yard and sign it. It'll be done this week. And I don't think I can do it tomorrow. I can do it Thursday, but it's up to other. We'll try to get it, everything signed by Friday.
Okay, the bank was just looking for it by Thursday, if that was possible.
It is from my perspective. I don't know, can others get there to put your signature on there? I can do it by Thursday.
I
Yes.
think I can as well.
Looks like you'll have it
Thank you so
Thursday.
much. Thank
Okay?
you.
All
Greatly
right, great.
appreciate it.
Thanks. All right, good night.
Have a great evening.
You too. Number 3 on the list is request for determination of applicability, 83 Revere Street. And I think that one is Mr. Hannigan.
Good evening. I'm here for our clients, Damian and Teresa Fahey, for their request for determination of applicability for a proposed addition to their existing home on 83 Revere Street. And it's at the intersection of the Pine Tree Brook taking. They had proposed or thought of adding on in 2015, but that was put on hold. At the time, we had Goddard Associates delineate the resource area, the mean annual high water line of Pine Tree Brook, and the 100 and 200 foot lines are shown on the proposed plan. The addition is on the opposite side of the existing home, further away from Pine Tree Brook, and they propose to build an addition for an increasingly sized family. So that's about it.
What about, I've got the map in front of me, Bob, so thank you for providing that. I see the proposed addition. What's the foundation look like? Are we talking about a slab? Is there a basement? Are the footings going in?
Yeah, I believe the foundation is a full foundation, but it's a crawl space. Perhaps Damien can discuss that a little bit more detail, but it's a crawl space for the below grade, and then there's a first and second floor addition.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, so you're going down how many feet, Bob? To excavate for your footings?
Just enough of the frost probably 4 feet.
Okay, so you've got excavators there. Do you have erosion controls here? Because you can see the side of the house. We've got equipment, where's the equipment going? How long it's gonna be there? You know our regular rules, no storage overnight, no refueling, but I'd like to see some erosion controls there.
Yeah, I erred in that regard. I didn't show the erosion controls. We can put it anywhere applicable. We can put it on the edge of their property on the left-hand side, or we can put it right adjacent to the proposed addition excavation. But I can update the plan for the commission to show some erosion control.
Okay, I mean, I know generally the site. Steve, have you been there?
I sure have. Yes.
All right. Any comments in terms of elevation changes, slope towards the brook, and need for erosion controls? Bob's already said he's gonna do it, so,
It's a very flat site for the
okay.
most part. There's a slight grade toward the brook and the pathway, right, Bob?
Slight, yeah, as you said, it's very,
slight.
very flat, slight,
Yep.
slight grade change, but not, it's pretty imperceptible. But,
Yes.
erosion control can be indeed provided.
And
Good.
what do you recommend, Steve, for erosion controls?
Some compost, soft,
8-inch.
8 inches is big enough. Yes, absolutely.
I think that's the current standard that you
Yeah.
prefer.
hmm Yeah, if it was on a slope or something, we'd go to the 12 or something even larger, but it's not. It's very flat, imperceptible slope. Not a problem.
And how far, just ballpark, how far away from I'm looking at the proposed addition, and I see, the current, looks like the side of the house. From that point, how much towards the brook should that erosion control 8-inch compost sock be? Steve or Hans or anybody, actually?
Well, between the area of work and the brook.
I know,
Whatever.
but he's gonna add it, so my question is, width, should it be 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet? I don't know.
I think what we can do is at the rear, we can start it at the right side of the existing deck and bring it to the property line and maybe wrap it around a little bit along the rear lot line. And then in the front, we can do it from the right side of the existing steps and porch and bring it to the street line and wrap it around a little bit along Revere Street. But I think that should take care of it.
I agree,
think so,
John.
too.
And just really quick, but if there's any storm drains that are in front of the house, just see if there's any need to protect those. So
Sure, yeah,
I mean,
I can check that and add that to the plan when I show
If there-
the erosion control.
yeah, if there are any there, because I know a lot of those are just direct pipes into the
Into the brook.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Jamie, do you have your contractor yet?
Nothing set yet, no.
All right, well, sometimes I'd like the contractor to meet with Steve Ivis at some point, because sometimes they don't pay any attention to us when we say, don't store your equipment in our jurisdiction, or don't refuel in it. So I'd like to have like a pre-construction meeting between your contractor and Steve Ivis, and he's available. I mean, he's around, and it's not an issue from our side.
No
Right.
problem.
Just as a point of clarification, would that be beyond the 100-foot line from the mean annual high water line, or totally off the site?
Well, our jurisdiction is 200 feet.
Right, but I mean, it's not like it's bordering vegetated wetlands or anything. It's,
It's even more sensitive than
It's a
that.
perennial stream. You got it.
It's more sensitive.
it shouldn't take
Yeah.
too long to excavate and
I don't think so.
yeah.
No.
So we'll make sure that they're aware of that.
Okay, good.
Okay, good.
Any other comments, questions, conditions from commissioners? Anybody want a site visit? I don't think we need one. I certainly know the area, but some people might think they want to see it. Anybody speak up or forever hold your peace?
I'm good.
Okay. Abutters, members of the public? I don't hear anybody. I don't see anybody. I might not be seeing.
I see there are two abutters listed, so
listed in what on the screen?
online, Paul and Kay.
Oh, Paul, yeah. Well, Paul is here, right?
Yeah, but he's muted, and as is Kay, so
Hello, Paul. And yeah, there you are. I saw something flash. You there, Paul?
I am, John. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, sir. Welcome tonight.
Thank you. No,
Have you been listening? Do you have any comments or questions?
No. Our only question was about whether or not it was going to be on the. Our only concern would have been if it was on the brook side, but it's not.
Correct. It's away from the brook.
Yeah, we hadn't had a chance to get to the Public Works Department and take a look at the plan. That was our only concern, that it not be on the brook side.
Got it. Okay. Have you heard the discussion about erosion controls and
Yes.
and storage of equipment and refueling of equipment?
Yes.
All right. All right. Anything else? Or Kay, you're in a butter as well? Or a member of the, you don't have to be in a butter.
No, she says she's fine.
Okay. Okay. All right. Fine. I just see the screen. So, all right. It looks like this is a request for determination of applicability. And as long as the conditions are complied with, it would probably make sense to issue a negative determination with the conditions that we've stated: the erosion controls, compost socks 8 inches in the distance and the location that's been described by Bob. And also to ensure, as Hans pointed out, that there be some kind of a silk sock protection if there are any catch basins there in the area of the street. And there may well be at that location that close to the brook. Anything else for special conditions? I don't.
Pre-construction, that's all, John.
And the pre-construction meeting as well, right? With Steve.
Yep.
All right.
And
Then
we'll have it on site. Damian and who are we talking with here? And Bob, so that we can take a look and see if there are any catch basins.
No problem.
I can show those on the plan when I modify it to show the socks.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our vote
If
tonight
any.
would our vote tonight would be conditional upon the receipt of those plans, Bob. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Any comments? Well, before we move, no comments that I can see. Is there a motion to issue a negative determination with the special conditions that we've announced? Is there such a motion? Hans
Make that
voted.
motion,
Is there a second to that motion?
The author.
Arthur?
Yes.
All right. All right, good. Any discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Hans?
Yes.
And I, John Kiernan, vote yes as well. Damian, you're all set to go. Thank you, Bob.
Thank
and
you.
We'll wait for your plans. We'll try to get it signed as I indicated to the last applicant. We try to get it signed by Thursday, but we'll be awaiting your plans before the release.
Very good. I'll send them off. Yep.
Perfect. All right, sounds good. Thanks, all.
All right,
Good night.
Thank you very much.
All right, next on the agenda is Thistle. This is a request for determination of applicability. This is Thistle Avenue and Riverside Avenue. And Arthur, can you make the presentation for this?
Be happy to, Mr. Chairman. This is a continuation of the commission's previous work with respect to the placement of Conservation Commission lands signs. And as you may recall, at the annual town meeting, the land in this area, namely 25 acres of salt marsh, previously under the jurisdiction of the select board, was conveyed to the Conservation Commission. There are an estimated 8 signs. I believe that was the budgeting for the additional order that should be arriving shortly, and the desires to get a number of them in the ground before the frost. Of those 8, 1 is already allocated, and that was a previous RDA approved by the Conservation Commission. The location of that sign is at the very far end of Riverside Avenue. On this map, this is where people approach the Quincy line. It's fairly heavily trafficked with respect to access to Black Rock, which goes out to the along the line of the Milton-Quincy border. The other heavily trafficked area is down Thistle Avenue, and you will see a mark on the map that is leading out to the canal, which was the Mount Hope Canal. We believe that historically it was built to convey granite from Quincy out to the Mount Hope Cemetery. And there's fairly heavy traffic in this area as well. So a sign located there would apply to the many people who go into that area with respect to all of the marsh there and to the left, whereas the other sign applies down to the Black Rock area. There is a photograph with your materials, which shows a gate to the access road going down to the canal, and the sign would go to the left of the gate, approximately where those trees are, so that it would be visible for anybody making access through this pathway down to the canal and beyond. So that's the proposal for that location, Mr. Chairman. And it's an RDA because it is in the vicinity of the wetlands, but this land is denoted as having been upland. And you can see that on a surveyor's map that was included that goes back to, I think, 1895 or thereabouts. You'll see it just beyond the Joseph McGovern gravel pit. By the way, that gravel pit was converted into what is now the Cortlandt Circle neighborhood. And just to the north of that, you can see the upland designated on the map. And that it would be in that upland adjacent to the wetland that the sign would be located. Any questions? I hope that helps, Mr. Chairman, on this one.
Oh, just for clarity of, if somebody were listening and was not familiar with the area, when you said heavily trafficked, you're talking about people, right?
People,
As
that's
opposed
right,
to
foot traffic,
cars.
that's right, not
Foot traffic.
vehicular traffic.
Okay.
Many people go down there for different reasons. Fishing is one of them, of course. There's hiking. This is an area for which there is a CPC application that we'll mention under other business. And that would include the designation of walking areas where we would be able to have people going without disturbing the marsh, whereas right now access is pell-mell. People go anywhere, and that's a very vulnerable marsh grassland area that we want to protect, but we can discuss that separately. So yes, it would be foot traffic, and that's why it is gated as well, referencing vehicular traffic, so that vehicles do not go down into that area.
Understood, well presented. And any questions or comments from commission members? Anything from abutters or hey, how are you, Ingrid?
Hi, Ingrid.
You should
Sorry,
introduce yourself for purposes of the record.
Ingrid Beatty, Commissioner.
Hey, thank you. So any abutters, members of the public that wish to make a comment? Because what we're trying to do is just put a sign there that says this is, Conservation Commission land, which I think is a good thing for public education, and it's not just to protect the land, and to deter things like dumping, but also to notify the public that this is open land, protected and valued natural resource. Any questions, comments, or can we move to negative determination with the same? Of course, the town is subject to the same regulations everybody else is. No, heavy equipment could be stored overnight or refueled on site. Although I think it is in uplands, but it would certainly be close to our jurisdiction. So with that, with those special conditions, is there a motion to issue a negative determination? I'll move for it, okay? Is there a second for it to put our sign there? Thanks, Wendy, very much. Any discussion? We'll do a roll call vote. Arthur, how do you vote, sir?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Hans?
Yes.
Ingrid?
I can't vote because I missed the.
You sure? You didn't? I thought you didn't hear Arthur at all? All right, you can abstain, and I'll vote yes. And the vote will carry with that. So thank you very much. Next on the agenda is next one. It goes to you, Arthur, as well. And this one is for Reedsdale Road.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. And this is a property that is between the on Reedsdale Road, between the access to the back of the library and the driveway to Milton Hospital. There is a sheet that you have in your materials that is drawn from an inventory of open space lands within the town of Milton that has been reviewed by Horsley Witten Group under the auspices of the planning office. And you'll see that there's no common name for this property. It consists of about 1.34 acres of a very large parcel that extends behind the library and up through the police station to Highland Street. And Mr. Chairman, you're familiar with this land historically as well. So what we have proposed is the location of a sign at this site. There are two photographs to assist. The first one is viewing the property from Reedsdale Road. And the second one is from the driveway at the library looking down into that conservation land. I did receive a telephone call from the town engineering office. Alan had asked me, since he couldn't find it denoted on the GIS map as being conservation property, what my source of information was. So I referred him to the Horsley Witten study and the page that you have in your packet. That's the complete information I have on that.
All right, and the purpose of this one, once again, is to install a sign indicating that this is conservation land, and both to deter any kind of illegal dumping or misuse of the land, and also to educate the public that this indeed is one of our recognized natural resources.
Correct.
Any comments from commissioners, questions?
John, this is the headwaters of which brook?
Unquity Brook.
Yes, so why don't we call it that?
What's that? Unquity Brook
Headwaters
headwaters.
parcel. Does that make sense?
Well, the name.
Well, if the sign's already been made, if you're talking about changing.
No,
these-
just
I think
Just
he's
how we
referring, Mr. Chairman, to the nomenclature on the table where it says no common name. Is that right, Steve?
yes, exactly.
So you're
Unquity Brook
proposing that it be
headwaters.
known as Unquity Brook Headwaters?
Yes,
Headwaters.
yes.
I'll convey that to,
Alan.
yeah.
Right, and that's, you know, that would match, I think we had I think there was a state grant actually, that we received some money when we permitted the 2 rain gardens behind the police station.
Yes.
As part of that application, that land was identified as the you know, the headwaters of the Unquity Brook.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Oh.
referencing. Yep.
Thank you for that, Steve.
All
Sure.
right. So we've got a motion to approve. I'll make the motion, the second.
Second,
All right, thanks, Tom. Any discussion? Hearing none. Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
Hans,
Yes.
Tom,
yes.
Ingrid,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
and I, John Kieran, vote yes as well. Perfect. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is application. Oh, that's it for those two. And then now we go to application for tree planting. Wendy, I think that's your item.
Yeah. So in the packet, guys hopefully had a chance to look over an email that I sent out to John, and I appreciate the opportunity to share it with you all and brainstorm here tonight. But as you know, we've talked several different times over the last few months about some different groups in the community who have been applying to the Community Preservation Committee for some grant money to do different projects around town. And part of those proposals included adding some trees to the town's tree inventory. And it occurred to me that perhaps we might be able to invite these groups to work with us to come up with a proposal to put in some trees in their projects, which are on public land, that we might be able to pay for using some of the funds that the conservation has in various accounts. And so we had talked a couple months ago about coming up with somewhat of a consistent formal process where we would ask proponents to come before us with with the concept and some and articulate their ideas that we could then vote on. So I just took the opportunity to flesh out a draft response letter that we might send out if and when community organizations or individuals approach us with the idea of utilizing some conservation funds for trees on public property. So I don't think it's necessary that I read through it word for word, but certainly.
No, it makes good sense, and we do have some funds. My only concern that I think I expressed initially is that we don't send the wrong message that the Conservation Commission is a funding source. We do have that revolving fund that's limited to 15,000 a year, but we may have other priorities. So people, if they think, oh, we can get $15,000 a year for trees, and like this year and last year, we spent the money for signs, and we've done. I guess we've used up everything that I thought we had as that virtual inventory, but I don't know that anybody's found it. Philip, have you found anything? I know that Wollaston Golf Course, I'm sure they had some that were stashed away in that what I call the virtual inventory.
Right, I do have the information. I can resend it out to you. I sent it a while ago, but I can send it out again to you and Wendy.
Well, why don't you send it to everybody?
Okay, I'll send it to everybody tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, do you know what it said? Because
Off the top of my head, I do not, but I know I have the information.
Okay. All right, good. Oh, that would be helpful. So and this is, fine. It's as long as, people don't see, ooh, we can apply for, money. Because like the CPC is a funding source. That's what it's designed for. Whereas we're not, and I don't want people to think they can rely upon us. They may, and I think Tom pointed out that we do have kind of an expectation, sort of a legacy coming our way, perhaps with a significant money. And that will certainly change the landscape. So I think putting in place a mechanism or a vehicle for making the request, I think is a great idea, Wendy. And I think this fits the bill. I just don't want to mislead somebody to say, oh, we've got $15,000 a year for trees, because that's probably not going to work. But
Well, we could certainly add something to this form letter that represents what you're saying, that, it's not like we have a continuously replenished budget for spending on this. But if we do happen to have some funding in our coffers, and somebody is proposing something that aligns with our goals, then it is something that we as a committee would consider.
Right, and that's the good idea that I credit you with coming up with, and I think you did address it, because the second line, it says Conservation Commission has some limited funding available, and I think if people read it, then they'll understand it, and I think that may accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish, is just say, don't come here every year, because it's not a line item in your new budget, because it may not be a line item in our budget. But I think that language, if people actually read it, they'll understand we have some limited funding available for planting. So I trust that people like the Shade Tree Advisory Committee will actually read that and appreciate the fact. And I'm not knocking them, because they should be looking for funding wherever they can get it, whether it's CPC or the DPW or anywhere. Any other ideas on the language here? Because I think the idea is great.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Wendy did a very nice job with the letter following the conversation that we had on our last site walk. And the only observation that I had was the point that you just made, and maybe incorporating a sentence into the letter whereby the Conservation Commission recommends that additional resources be explored for funding as well. And John mentioned the CPC. And Wendy, just before you came on this evening, I mentioned that I had a conversation with the tree warden in Milton, Branch Lane, whom I think you know, at an event that was held the Sunday evening. And he didn't know about the CPC as a source of funding for the Shade Tree Advisory Committee that he was advocating for, which is a nonprofit entity and would be therefore eligible to apply for CPC funding. So just a brief sentence about additional sources of funding might be appropriate. And I don't know what the exact wording for that might be.
I think you just said it.
Yeah. Or maybe something, very vague that we, we see our funds as supplemental to other funding sources that might be available.
That's perfect.
Okay.
The MCC sees its fundings as being supplemental to other sources, and we encourage applicants to seek funding in all sources, from all sources.
Right. Okay.
So I have a question. So Wendy, is this letter solely to respond to people or organizations who reach out to Conservation Commission, or is this letter to be sent out to various organizations?
I was initially thinking of this as more a response to have at the ready for when individuals or organizations reach out inquiring. The you might have noticed at the end of the letter is the message that I had received from one of the applicants that sort of got this ball rolling. And, I wanted to respond to her quickly, but felt that, I certainly couldn't do so just on my own willy-nilly without having something that had been discussed and approved and voted on by the commission.
Right. No,
So,
absolutely. And in reading it clearly looks like it's a response. So that just begs a question. Maybe or John, how many of this requests have we received in the past, or do we expect to see?
The first
Like how
was probably 20, 25 years ago. And
Okay.
I don't even know where it came from, whether it was Glover School or if it was the Parks Department, but we did plant some trees around Turner's Pond.
Oh, and that was on request. Okay.
Yeah, and then the second one was the Shade Tree Advisory Committee. And they never really quantified their request, but that's probably 3 or 4 years ago now.
Okay.
Something like that, when they appeared before us and they, they were looking for, it seemed like a lot of money, but they didn't have a particular amount. That happened to be the same year that DPW had a line item of $43,000 in their budget for street trees.
Right.
So I think that whatever happened between the Shade Tree Advisory Committee and the DPW, it was taken care of or was addressed, and they never
Right.
came back to us. But that would be the second, and then the third one was Glover School.
right.
That's my memory.
Understood.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen all that often, but
No.
it's good to have a letter that's, locked and ready to go. And I do like what you just mentioned, that, that this would be considered a supplement to something else, some primary source.
Mhm. I think we're fortunate in that we have some more flexibility with our funds than some of the other funding sources might have. For example, the Shade Tree Advisory folks, they're limited to spending their tree dollars along public roadways, whereas we don't have that restriction. So we do have more flexibility, which is nice. And one of the other things that that is in the letter here that we also spoke about at our site walk meeting was the idea of using these funds not just for planting new trees, but also for helping to pay for maintenance and saving, if you will, older established significant trees.
Right, and that's a high ticket item. I remember being involved in that sort of thing. There's oh gosh, I can't remember. It's in Rosendale. There was gosh, Tom, you might know. It was an old hospital or sanitarium, and then it was turned into a conservation place. Do you know where I'm talking about? Sort of behind the cemetery.
I think I know the general area. It was called Boston State Hospital.
Yes, yes, and there were a lot of mature trees there, and I think one of their most extensive tasks and the most expensive was maintenance of old, large, established trees, and so
Right.
that's a really important thing. Those trees are extremely valuable. So yeah, I think that would be a great thing to add. And then I guess when I read this over, do we want to somewhere say native species of trees? I just didn't see it in the letter.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that. I mean, we do have a request for a plan showing the type of tree.
Right.
But certainly we could put something in there saying that we, our preference is for native species.
I mean, I would even go stronger than that, not that our preference is, but the money is to be put to the planting of native species of trees.
There you go.
If that,
I agree with Ingrid. I had the same thought in the conversation with Branch Lane.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
I'm trying to think back. Do you remember, I think some of you were on the commission when we we did everything we could to save that beech tree at the library.
yes.
When they were putting the parking lot in there. We struggled mightily to save that tree. Everybody, the library trustees, the Conservation Commission, DPW, we did somersault. It was a beautiful old
It was a
beech.
beautiful tree.
You didn't make it. There was nothing we could do. It was so infested with carpenter ants, and it was gone. And when they finally took it down, it was proof because the inside was pretty hollow.
Mm.
But it is an expensive one, and I think in the past we've made efforts to do that. And you're right, it's expensive and not always successful. But that's something that we could consider per the application.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you've got some edits, but we're pretty much ready to go. So my only question is this. To the extent that part of our obligation and our mandate is public education, is it enough to just put this and hold it in the ready to go if somebody pops up, or should we put it on the website?
I would love to put it on the website. Absolutely. And then we, people might stumble across it, but also we can start chatting it up and I guarantee word will get around.
Right. And but again, it goes back to that's why I said in the first place, I assumed it would go on the website. And I was concerned that people would say, oh, we've got another funding source. This is great. That's why I was so concerned with it, because I assumed it would go to the public. But I think it should, actually. I think we should disseminate the information. So
I think it would be great to put it on the website, but and I think John, you brought it up, or somebody brought it up to say that this would be a supplemental, not a primary source of funding.
Yes.
In other words, they would have to have demonstrated that they were able to get, source funding from somewhere else, thereby, making the whole thing more credible. And then it contingent upon what resources we have at any given time.
Mm-hmm. Right. I was also thinking that it would be perhaps worthwhile to reach out to the Shade Tree Advisory Committee folks and get their thoughts to make sure that we're in alignment with their goals as well. We certainly don't want to be conflicting in any way, but it's also I think it might be nice for both of our groups to understand more about where the other group is coming from. So, like, for example, if we have applicants coming before us seeking tree money for trees that are right along the roadside, a public road, then we might just say, hey, we think it's a great project, but we think that you're a better candidate for the Shade Tree Advisory Fund, for example. And then we could perhaps save our funds for projects that couldn't be funded by the Shade Tree folks, as an example.
Well, it sounds like, can you tinker with the language as we've discussed tonight? Because it seems like you were in agreement with all of the comments. And
Yeah.
then, and then circulate a final draft before we vote to put it on the website?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right.
I will do that.
Any other thoughts or comments? Thanks for doing the work, Wendy.
You bet. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
All right, so we'll look forward to seeing that. So next on the agenda, we have signed discussions. That goes back to Arthur.
Okay, there are several sheets or locations on sheets in your packet, and none of these, if I recall correctly, abut wetlands, so there's no RDA request. But what would be helpful, considering the limited number of signs that we have remaining, and the fact that our monies need to go. Oh, John, before I forget, on the last topic, should we be looking at the possibility of an article that would go before town meeting for monies that would come to the Conservation Commission from the trees that will be harvested at the Memory Care Center? Possibly an article that would not restrict the Conservation Commission, as is the case with the revolving fund?
It's a very good idea, but it's premature by about a week.
I understand.
It's one of the issues that we need to discuss in executive session. And so tonight, the select board is meeting with, or Peter Mello is the town council, talking to them. They've got some of the same issues on the litigation side. And maybe we can, this is kind of additional business because we've got 2 superseding orders and that we need to address, but generally no vote, we're not deliberating or not taking a vote because it's not on the agenda. But it is information that you've got, and I think Philip sent out both superseding orders. And we do need to talk about both of them. And Arthur, your point is directly related to one of them.
Correct. Yeah, I was just wanting to get this on our minds and on future agendas, so we don't lose track of it. It may be something that would be a possibility for the annual town meeting in May.
Absolutely.
2025.
So I think if we can defer this, and it'll probably be it has to be within the next week, that we're going to have another meeting, perhaps with town council.
Good. I may not remember this next week, so I wanted to be sure.
No, I will, Arthur, not because I've got a better memory, but because I talked to Peter Mello about it today.
Oh, good. Yeah.
That very issue relating to the monies that we anticipate that Tom Palmer mentioned, I think, at our last meeting. So it's an excellent point. I just think we might be a few days early on discussing.
That's fine.
All right. So go back. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay, I'm sorry about that digression, but I didn't want to lose it. This grouping will help us decide on a number of locations that might be signs. It's not exhaustive by any means. The first location is on Randolph Avenue. And this is a lot of land that was conveyed from the John Milton Conservation Trust to the Conservation Commission in 2018 or thereabouts, I believe. It consists of 1.4 acres, and it's on the assessors records as Milton Conservation land. And as I don't have it identified on the Wesley Witten inventory. There are 2 photographs. One is across Randolph Avenue at the intersection of School Street, And there are actually three. One is at the end of, you see there's a wooden fence that's in front of that land. And then a photograph at the end of the wooden fence. And then I peeked over the wooden fence and took a picture of the land in back of the fence. So
Whose fence is it? Do you know?
I do not know the owner of the fence. That's something that we would have to explore. Since this is Town of Milton Conservation, according to the Board of Assessors.
Yeah, it's a little antithetical to have a fence surrounding public open space.
Right, and I wanted to get the guidance of the commission as to what we would do in this circumstance.
And you're talking about putting a sign up saying this is conservation land.
Right.
Right.
You can peek over the fence if you want.
Right, and it's on a main thoroughfare, which will be the subject of one of the later pieces of land that we'll discuss.
Now, I can't remember when, this is when John Cronin and Ted Wendell and Peter Jeffries conveyed a series of parcels to us. Am I correct? Is this one part of that?
That's my understanding, yes.
Right. And
Most of them went to the Woodland Trust, but a small number of them went to the Conservation Commission.
Right.
Along with several $1,000s, something like $3,000 to $5,000 that they had left in their treasury. And
Correct.
this was one of their pieces of land, as I recall.
Wow. Who would you talk to find out whose fence that is? I think it's a great place for a sign, by the way. Yeah.
The location is, it's right down the street from St. Michael's Church. It's a very heavily trafficked area, School Street neighborhood, just opposite at the intersection of School Street and Randolph Avenue is what appears to be a colonial marker saying it's 7 miles to Boston. It's really kind of neat. I never knew about that marker.
Yeah.
I knew about a lot of others, but it was only when I was at that site that I found it. I don't know whether we should go to the building department first.
Well, Arthur, could the assessors help us? Because some of the parcels that John Cronin and company conveyed to us had been conveyed via conservation restrictions and sometimes outright deeds from a homeowner. So I should think that the assessors would have a history of the land to see who most recently owned it, just to find out who put the fence up there. I assume that it was somebody next door or an abutting property that actually deeded the land to the Milton Conservation Land Trust.
That's a fair assumption. And they may not be with us at this time. May have been done a long time ago, and
I'm
we
sure.
can find out.
Okay.
But I'll be happy to pursue it with the assessor's office.
Arthur, I have a vague memory of that marker that you just mentioned, where it says somebody blew across it. But I can't imagine. I'm trying in my mind's eye to imagine where this is, because this is a stone. Must be a stone's throw from my house. You say the intersection of School Street and Randolph?
Yes. By St. Michael's.
Just before you get to St. Michael's, going to the Lower Mills.
Just before.
So the stone is on the left-hand side of this map. That's School Street that you see on the left.
Yeah. I'm looking at the printout here.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I have to go take a walk tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, Ingrid. In the meantime, I'll pursue this with the assessor's office.
Yeah, yeah.
But how many signs do we have?
We have 8, and we now have 5 left.
But you've got
We've got 3 sites that we had as a carryover from last year. We did 2 earlier tonight. So now we have a balance of 5.
All right, but you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sites. So
That's
are
right.
we trying to prioritize where these signs should go?
That's what we would do as a group.
Um,
One or two of them will fall off the table, as you'll see from discussion that we have.
all right, so why don't we go through them all and then we can, in order to prioritize them? Because I mean, that looks like a great place to put it, but doesn't make any sense to put the sign there if the fence is up.
Right. And is the fence on conservation land? Is the fence on town land? So that's what we have to find out.
Okay. So that we can defer a little bit. What about Brush Hill Road and Ponce Valley Parkway?
Yeah, the Milton Healthcare lawn, and there's a map attendant to that. It's under a conservation restriction from Tom Flatley. So the question that this piece of land poses, and one other, is whether we would be putting Conservation Commission signs on lands that we don't have deeded to us, but for which there are conservation restrictions. And you'll see the notation says that this is to the town of Milton to be enforced by the Milton Conservation Commission. So I put this in here because of that enforcement statement. A sign would indicate that there's some level of jurisdiction or responsibility on the part of the Conservation Commission for that gift to the town by Mr. Flatley. It's a very sizable piece of land, 4.6 acres, and it's at a strategic location in the town. So I
Sounds like a great place
on
for
the table for discussion and advice.
Well, Tom Palmer, I know this may be sensitive to you because you were acutely aware of the sign up by Brooks Field on Guile Road when we were talking about the land swap, because there was a sign there that said something like Conservation Commission enforcement. Is there not?
That was a DP funding sign, Tom? DEP funding sign?
That was, yeah, from years ago when state money was contributed to the conservation purchase. And that was actually a part of the agreement with the state that sign would be posted. But it's not visible from any road. Fortunately, the tree that it was nailed to is still doing fine. That's why it's still there. But I think this Flatley location is a good location. It is a big piece, as Arthur says, and it is protected. So why not have a sign? I think it's easily as appropriate as any of these other locations.
Oh, but what about since the sign is already made and it's, what does it say? Conservation
It
land?
just said Milton Conservation Commission.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
What you mostly see there is kids participating in field sports. That's what that site is used for. Seems regularly, almost daily, there are games going on there.
Are we talking about Flatley Field or are we talking about a different locale?
Talking about Flatley Field, Milton Healthcare.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that what you are talking about, Arthur?
Brush Hill Road?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Oh, that's easy.
I'm not sure, just in my opinion, of having Conservation Commission sign there. I mean, yeah, it seems like it's more actively managed through Parks and Rec, and we're pretty hands-off, even though it's a heavily used area. So, and also having the CR in place, yeah, I don't know if that carries the same weight as having actual ownership of the land under the Conservation Commission.
Yep, and that's part of the question I have on the table. And I was also wondering whether this is a situation, and you raised it perfectly, Hans, where we would talk with the park department beforehand and see what it is that we might do together. If anything, they may find it helpful. They may not find it helpful. I don't recall that they have a sign down there like the signs that exist at Kelly Field, Andrews Field, and so on down the line.
I do know that there is, and as a soccer coach, I could say there is at times a tenuous relationship between the Milton Healthcare Facility and the users of the soccer field. So, you know, it has been an area that keeps coming up of frustration.
So we want to stay out of that fight, right?
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Keep your head down. Pick your fights.
But again,
Okay, so
that's just my opinion.
Well, it's a valid opinion. Thanks for stating it. Yeah, we obviously have to prioritize. So if we've got, you know, 5 and how many signs? 5?
you have 5 left, yeah.
And 7 sites.
Let's take a look at the next one. This was a gift to the town of Milton by a family named McGinley. And you see the map of the land. There's access directly on Canton Avenue. And I wanted to see whether or not the commission felt that was an appropriate type of location for a sign, particularly where the vast majority of the land is well off Canton Avenue.
Has anyone been in there?
I've been there, but not through the whole thing. I've been to the location, Tom, but not through the whole thing.
It has a sort of neck that goes out to Canton Ave, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the neck is so narrow that if you put the sign on the neck, you might have to step over it.
There's a little bit more space than that.
Yeah.
You'd be able to get around it on either side.
Is that
Very few people, I think, know that you could walk back there and be on public land. But if you walk back, you're in the wetland along Trout Brook, right?
I think that's right.
There's a little water body marked in there. It looks like on the
Correct.
map you made. I don't know what that water body is. It's hard to get back there because it's overgrown. You could try to come from Robin Street going up the brook. I don't know. To me, it seems like a less obvious place to put one because it's such a narrow neck going in there. It's not likely to attract many visitors.
Yeah, it's dead ended, and I'm just wondering, you know, from the surrounding homeowners' perspective. I mean, I know they get the benefit of the open space, which it would be delightful to have public access to, but that, if I were a homeowner, I'd say, who are these people walking down this narrow entryway to a dead end area? I don't know, that's an interesting one. Is it are there lines of demarcation? I mean, can you tell where 1045 property ends and where 1059 property ends?
Approximately. Yeah, you can see the space. Depending upon the season of the year, during the summertime, it's much more overgrown and less visible.
Yeah.
The last time I was there was some refuse in there.
There was some what?
Refuse.
Oh. Wow. Well, if I were the homeowner, I'd want to keep it pristine.
Yep.
But
again, this is just here for an example of another type of land. And maybe it's a secondary consideration we should put aside until we go through others. It's again, just to get a sense of guidance from you as to what we should be looking at as we move forward with only 5 remaining signs.
all right, so let's keep going so we can just have a sense.
Okay. The next one has a couple of places of interest to us. Wendell Brook Conservation Water Management Area. This is a very large tract of land, 5.1 acres. Town of Milton Conservation Commission. It's funded and maintained by the DPW. You see it at the corner of Canton Avenue and Highland Street.
Is this the one that's got a ton of invasives on it, Arthur? Is this, we were there before? And I think there was a invasive pulling expedition one year. It was when Judith was still alive. Does this ring a bell?
What was the invasive species?
I think it was a lot of climbing vines that Judith was.
We saw those, I think, Ingrid, when we were taking a look at something that had been dumped into the brook that ran down Wendell Park.
Yes.
Is that correct?
I think so. That sounds
And
familiar.
at that intersection of Highland Street and Canton Avenue, there's a steep drop down.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been there a few times. Most of the times we came from 600 Canton Avenue, you know, from the Winter Valley side of it. But this is
down further towards Canton.
towards Highland. It's right on, isn't it right on the corner?
Corner of Highland and Canton at the intersection with Thatcher.
Right across the street from the police station.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, we made a deal with, I think it was Building 6 at Winter Valley, that they were going to do their replication on the land abutting this piece of land. In fact, I think some of the replication may even go into it.
Yes, that's correct, John.
Yeah, I think it's a great place for a sign. It's open, it's not going to be developed. And, you know, we need to make sure we actually issued an enforcement order. This is at least 20 years ago. Some of the folks on Canton Avenue across the street were taking all of their lawn cuttings and crossing the street and dumping it. So we had to very politely knock on their door and say, please don't do that. So it was done in a very friendly and neighborly fashion, and they stopped doing it for a while anyway.
Would you put the sign then on Canton Avenue, maybe halfway up that land?
No, I think that would be a great spot for it, yeah.
And that way it'd be fairly close to Wendell Park too.
Yes.
So, Arthur, not on the corner, you say further up on Canton?
That's as I was asking after John said what he did about the behavior of some of the people on Canton Avenue. I thought of the corner as well, Ingrid, but that's where it really drops off.
It does really drop off, but it would be so much more visible if it was.
It would be sort of like at the corner near where you live.
Yeah, exactly.
That was done with a sign there.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some way to do it.
Take a look at it, see if it doesn't obstruct traffic, etc.
Yeah,
that would be a consideration at that's a pretty dangerous intersection at times.
Many people sit at the light at Thatcher and look at that lot because Highland and Thatcher are offset there.
Mm-hmm.
And the part of the lot you're looking at, if you're sitting at the light at Thatcher, is the wettest part. It's a little more open, and there's a low stone wall there.
Yeah,
that's where I would put it. Although, yeah, you could put it further along Canton Ave, but it would have the most visibility there, I would say.
Okay, let's look at that.
Yeah, let's take a look at it.
Okay, so we've got the primary site, we're agreed at the intersection, and then the backup site if the intersection doesn't work. And I'd feel comfortable, would you not, if we were to consult with the police and just see, since we've got ambulances going up there, fire trucks coming out from the fire station, police work, we don't want to put something that's going to interfere with visibility. That's my only concern. Would that make sense?
Makes perfect sense, though.
Okay. So that one's done. I'll try and get through this quickly. We have some additional land along Blue Hill Parkway. And this is to see whether or not the commission, we have one sign at the Ice House. And this is to see whether the commission has any interest in putting any additional signage along that area, or if what we have is sufficient.
Put one
Where would
across
the
the street
second
from number
location be?
400.
What's that? 400?
You can put it right
Your
across the
address?
street, right across the street from me.
All right.
That's what you'd like, huh, Hans?
No, I'm
That's
joking.
all right. You can just say that.
Where is the sign at the Ice House?
Just to the right of the Ice House.
Yes.
So
It would be repetitive, I think, to have another one on the same side of the street.
I thought that too, but I wanted to put this before you.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, that takes care of that.
Yep.
Then we have, this is a question. This is a conservation restriction. It's the Walcott Woods area. Do we want to stay away from restrictions, or are restrictions something that we want to make visible?
I think that
Oh,
the key part of that whole area is the connection at the rear to the trail that goes to the Blue Hills. That's
mhm.
a place where you would want to know that there is access to open space. You wouldn't see it from Canton Ave. You only see it on the interior road, maybe. But that's where I would think of putting it.
Has anyone walked up there recently?
No, I haven't.
I have been up there within the past month, and there's still construction equipment in that conservation parking lot.
Hmm.
That's where they stage some equipment.
And
There's dedicated spaces there for open space, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that would
might
be
be
a
looking-
advice.
I might have been looking at the wrong spot, but there's a sign in the vicinity of that says it's sensitive habitat and not to enter.
Oh,
So, and that's from,
I've not noticed that.
maybe I was at the wrong location, but I know it was on the backside of Walcott.
Say it again.
I don't know why that would be.
Sensitive habitat, do not enter?
Yeah, to keep people from walking across into that development. So I don't know if that's the exact
Oh.
same spot or
Do you think it was a DCR sign?
I don't think so. I was confused by it. I'll just say that much.
You know,
I
it's
don't remember.
often the case. Yeah, it's often the case when a place gets developed for residential that these signs start popping up to discourage people. We have to check out it's not something like that.
Right. I'll just put it on my rounds.
Yeah, if you could, Steve, that would be very helpful, because I agree. I mean, that's kind of antithetical to the whole
uh-huh.
purpose of public open space.
Exactly.
Don't walk here, it's open space.
Yeah.
A place you can see signs like that is 2 Adams Street, the extra storage. There was a mitigation requirement that in the rear there, that ledge be protected. But if you walk back there, you get the feeling you're not supposed to be there because there are a lot of private property signs. You know, it's not that there isn't private property back there, but the private signs are more conspicuous than anything else.
So we'll take this under advisement and wait for Steve to have some feedback for us.
Yeah,
Sure.
that would be helpful. See if you can spot that sign and get the origin
Okay.
of it. All right.
The
Happy
last
to.
one that I have before us tonight is another tract of land. This is fairly sizable. We know the area off Barton's Lane. It has a narrow access to it. My recommendation in putting this one forward is that we have a guideline that says, in these instances, we do not sign. And the reason that it's different, in my opinion, from Canton Avenue is that this is on a secondary street. It's not on a main thoroughfare in the town where there'd be a great deal of visibility. It's back in a neighborhood. So.
Well, wait a minute. You said we have a guidance not to put it near private dwellings?
No, what I was thinking is guidance that would say when we have a tract of land like this with a very narrow access to a large space in a quote secondary close quote neighborhood. In other words, it's not on a main thoroughfare where you get a lot of visibility.
Right.
That we not sign those properties. Another example would be the landlocked property up off of Dean Road. We've got about, what, 3 or 4 acres up there, but we wouldn't sign it because it's landlocked and nobody's going to go up Dean Road to find it. And in this instance, since Fuller's Lane is not something that's well trafficked in town, even though it's conservation property, my recommendation would be that we don't sign these types of properties with the limited.
Well, it doesn't that also apply to the Canton Avenue?
The only exception is Canton Avenue is a main thoroughfare. But if we're going to put a sign by the police station, there's no sense in my judgment of putting a sign on the McGinley property. They're pretty close to one another.
That's true, but you mentioned
You still do it.
Fuller's Lane. I know what you're saying, but I would put the Canton Avenue McKinley land in the same category as Fuller's Lane, because I've seen the narrow access.
I'll take that advice.
And the proximity of. I don't have a strong feeling of that. It's just, to me, it's the same because you've got a very narrow access. You've got people walking to and fro between two houses.
Okay, so how about for our guidelines, we say that narrow access and secondary streets would not be signed.
I don't think we have to establish a policy or a guidance.
No, it's a guideline. It's just, if we're gonna have a limited number of signs, we have other properties to take a look at, that if any of them fall into these categories, we wouldn't consider them.
I don't think we need to establish a policy or a guideline. I think we can exercise our discretion.
Okay.
Using those criteria, but I don't think we need to formalize the act of discretion.
Yeah. And I'm not suggesting emotion or anything of that nature, just a sense of direction. That's what I mean by a guideline.
Gotcha.
So
I agree with you, John, that this is not a good spot for a sign.
I agree.
Even if you get down that neck, you're in a wetland that's completely overgrown.
It sure is.
Yeah.
But Tom, Tom, would you say the same thing about the Canton Avenue site?
Well, it does go into Trout Brook corridor. I don't know how overgrown it is, but if you were to put the sign actually back in the property, it might go years before anybody saw it.
Yeah, I agree with it. I agree.
Okay. We have some good, this is very helpful.
Yeah, and I think if you fill in a couple, or if we fill in a couple of the blanks, one of them being Walcott Woods, Steve is going to work on that. You're going to talk to the police station about the location,
right?
And then maybe the Board of Assessors on the Randolph Avenue one with the fence.
Correct.
All right, so I think we can defer any kind of decision as to which 5 out of the 7 it can go on until we get all the data. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, good. All right, and that would end 6. New business is next. Steve, do you have any new business or additional business?
Just that one thing we talked about earlier. I issued a emergency cert order for the DPW to do some work along Bradley Ave with a couple of pipes that are currently discharging from Bradley onto the side slope up gradient of the pond. It's a downslope on Curry College. And they had a request from Curry College if they could do something about the sediments and pieces going into the pond there. So the DPW decided to take, and there are a couple of huge discharges into that intermittent stream on the up gradient side, which would be north. And they're going to bury the discharge into the gravel underneath the stream, which I thought was a novel idea. It's a large perforated pipes. That's all. That's all they're going to do. And John reminded me that we need a plan from them as well to put in the file once they've done the work. So that's going to be ongoing in the next couple of weeks. They have exactly a month to finish. Just FYI. Otherwise, I have nothing else.
All right, and y'all follow up with Tom
I
to get
shall.
plans from the town?
Yes.
Yeah, because that is part of the regulation for our emergency work, that it can be approved and done,
Right.
but you do have to follow it with the plan.
Yes.
And so everything seems to make sense to me. Any other additional businesses? I've got the 2 superseding orders to talk about.
I just have one, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very quick, and that is to let everybody know that the contract has been executed between the town of Milton and Environmental Partners Group located in Quincy for the survey of the Neponset River estuary. This is being done through CPC funding. I don't think everybody wants the contract with all of the terms, legal terms, but maybe everybody might want to have a copy of the proposal that the contract supports. And possibly, Phil, we could pull that a couple of page document out and get it around to all the members of the commission so that they have it in their possessions. And work should begin this fall, later this fall.
Wonderful, Arthur. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the support of the CPC to get the funding to do it. We're grateful.
Couldn't have done it without you, Wendy.
It's I tell you, the Community Preservation Act has done wonderful things for our town and so many other towns in the Commonwealth. Very grateful for it.
Well, thank you for your work on the committee. All right, a couple of things, additional business. And I mentioned it before, we've got 2 superseding orders, and there are a couple of confusing points that, we should point out. One of them is that there seems to be some disagreement as to whether or not when a superseding order issues by DEP, if it is different from that which was issued by the Conservation Commission, does it need to go back to the Conservation Commission? I don't think it does, but because I think it's now a DEP order. Well, I think that's the way it's going to go, but I've deferred entirely to Peter Mello on this one.
I agree with you, John, about that.
Yeah, I don't think it can. It should.
I agree as well.
All right. One of the difficulties would be that if the order from 648, 652 Canton Avenue had to come back to us, we're the ones that denied it. So I'm not sure what we'd have to do. We'd deny it again. I guess I don't know. I mean, unless people change their minds. So I don't think
we got superseded. That's what supersede does.
That's what
supersede does.
Right. But John, there's a little, a glitch in that, and that is the superseding order doesn't include our performance
Bylaw.
standard that requires the payment of a fairly significant amount of money for tree replacement. So we're going to be very careful about saying, no, it doesn't come back to us, because that was our understanding when we approved it. So I think this may be an opportunity. We may, go back and ask for like a friendly amendment to the superseding order so that we don't lose. It's approximately $350,000.
And is that a 40B?
No,
So that's
not.
memory care, right?
No, it's not.
No.
So that money, I guess, also falls under the bylaw, which is
Well,
separate.
no, our performance standard, that is what I refer to. I always call it the 3-to-1 performance standard. It's easier to say that to describe the, circumference at breast height, total sum of the inches. So the 3-to-1, that's a performance standard we've used for both state applications and town bylaw applications. So we've never distinguished that. And it is in our order, but it is not in the superseding order. So what we're going to, I talked to Peter about it today, and it's not something that we don't want to appeal it if we don't have to. And I don't think, I'm just guessing, I don't think DEP cares, because their superseding order actually was more protective of the interests which we protect than we were. Because when it left us after we had permitted it, it went back to the planning board, and the planning board actually reduced the footprint. And then when that was reduced, it allowed the request from the fire chief to increase the circular drive, which impacted our protected land, that was remediated. When they shrunk the footprint, they moved the circular drive, they reduced the portion of land taken that was protected land. And what it did is it increased the ratio of replication to altered land. So it's all to our benefit. So we don't want to appeal that. It's good news for us. And that's what the DEP approved in the superseding order. The only concern I have is that we need to make sure that we don't lose that performance standard tree replacement component of our order. So that's on the table for our discussion with the town council as to how to address that. And that may be, I don't know if it's going to be a litigation issue. I don't think so. I hope not. But that if it is, then we would discuss litigation in executive session, but we would need to have a separate and very rapid, when I say rapid, within a week at least, if not shorter than a week, a public meeting where we'd start a public session, we'd adjourn, go into private executive session to discuss litigation with town council, and then we could return to a public session to adjourn. That's 107, 111 Highland. Now, the other one is 648 and 652. That's the one where we denied the permit because they declined to provide mounding information to see what the impact of the water coming onto our jurisdictional land. Remember, this is the project with 53,000 cubic yards of fill to raise the elevation over a 5-acre footprint, 5 feet, an average of 5 feet. That's a lot of fill. And so we had asked for the implications of water mounding from that addition of the fill, as well as the location and the depth of the foundations. They declined to do that. DEP made a rule, and you've all got a copy of it, and please read it, because essentially they say they overrode our decision to deny it for lack of information having to do with mounding, because essentially it was outside of our jurisdiction. So the legal issue is whether or not, does our jurisdiction stop at the 100-foot mark no matter what? Or if you put in 53 cubic yards on the other side of the 100-foot line, does that have any direct and proximate impact upon the resources that we protect. That's the issue, and that's the issue that's already been raised by the neighborhood group that's represented by Dan Hill. So at this point, I don't know whether or not they're going to appeal. I can guess, but I don't know that. And then it's up to, Peter and the Board of Selectmen with our involvement as to whether or not to appeal that superseding order that allowed I forget what the number is now. It was reduced from 234 down to like 140 something units. It's a lot of units going right across from Wendell Park and Elm Street on Canton Avenue. So that's why we'll need to have a more rapid public meeting, albeit one in which we'll probably go into executive session to discuss these issues. All right, so I just need, people to be available sometime over the next 10 days. I think the last date that we can file an appeal is the 20th. I think Ned indicated the last day for the appeal for 107, 111 Highland. And I have no idea what the neighborhood group is going to do in that. But they have until the 19th of November. And on the 648, 652 Canton Avenue, we have until the 20th of November. So sometime between now and then, we have to have a meeting to see which direction we're going to go in. But it has to be done in enough time that we can get council up and participating. So I just, hopefully you'll have some time during the evening for a virtual meeting in the next week. All right, any thoughts or questions on that?
You want to try and schedule that, John? Get some dates now?
Sure. I'm not even looking at a calendar, and I should. Because what day is the 20th? Does anybody?
It's a Wednesday.
Right, so that's a week from tomorrow. So we need 48 hours. So the first day we could do it, if we did it tomorrow morning, would be Friday, right? So we could do it Friday. I think we can have a meeting on Saturday, Sunday. It doesn't matter to me. Monday. So Friday or Monday? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. How do people look for Friday? Now, I'm only saying that because Philip would have to move very quickly to schedule it for Friday.
Friday night?
Yes. Well, if you schedule it tomorrow morning, it could be any time after Friday. We don't have to do it at night if people can make time during the day, which I believe I can this week. We just need what, Philip, 48 hours?
Yes, 48 hours.
So if you scheduled it for 9 o'clock, by 9 o'clock tomorrow, we could do it anytime after 9 o'clock on Friday.
John, I'm free anytime on Friday from 2 o'clock through to midnight.
All right. How about 2 o'clock on Friday?
I can't do 2 o'clock. I can do after 3.
3 o'clock?
After-
John,
I'm after-
I'm out in, sorry, I'm out in Sterling on Friday. I won't be back until about 5. That's all right. You can go ahead without me.
Okay.
I can do 5 or after 5. Anybody else?
Okay, Hans, you do after 5 on Friday?
I can.
Okay. So, Wendy?
Earlier is better for me, but I think that given the choice, I think Steve should be there. So
Well, I may not even be back by 5, depending on traffic. Because I'm leaving at 4 and from Sterling. I've got a
Oh.
conference.
You won't be back by 5.
No.
yeah,
It's not a prayer.
unless you're gonna apparate. But
Well,
I guess not.
Well, it is Friday. There's less traffic on Fridays usually.
I'm not suggesting that you talk on the phone while you're driving, but you could listen on the phone while you're driving.
I could, yes. That's quite possible.
All right. So Arthur, you're good at 5?
Yes, sir.
All right. Wendy, you're good at 5?
yes, although I may be having to leave early. I don't know if it's a issue of a quorum.
It
Mm.
will be an issue of a quorum.
It will, okay.
So, well, again, I'm just trying to juggle schedules here. How about
Yeah.
4 o'clock? What if we started at 4? What does that?
4
do?
is better for me. Yeah.
Ingrid, can you make 4?
Yes.
Okay, Arthur, you can make 4?
Yes.
Hans?
Yep.
Tom?
Yes.
Beautiful. Then I can do it. And if you can listen, great. But we've got our quorum. That means we'd all be meeting together. That's perfect. So I will tell Peter that we can do a 4 o'clock. It'll be virtual, 4 o'clock on Friday. And Philip, can you announce that? And you have to say executive session. And you have to identify the purpose of the executive session to discuss potential litigation. It should be potential litigation involving two superseding orders. And just put the
potential litigation involving two superseding, superseding, right?
correct superseding orders. One
I
of
don't
them.
list them, do I?
Yeah, I think you do. I think you do have to list them
Okay.
with the address. It's just the address.
Okay.
If Phil, either Gail Neville or Linda Napoli could help you with that, because Lynn's very experienced with doing them, the executive session protocols for the select board. And
Perfect. I'll call in the morning.
Gail, of course, with her expertise in the clerk's office.
Yeah, that's great because she would know if you have to put the address in there or not. I think you do, but I'm not sure.
Right.
Peter is very careful. He's an iDotter. This is a compliment from me. He's an iDotter and a T crosser. He's very careful about that. But Lynn or well, Lynn would know for sure.
All right, I'll see if I can contact either one of those
Very good.
ladies.
And Sue Galvin would know too. All right, so that's all I've got for additional business. Anything else? No?
No.
All right. I think we're ready to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Done.
Night,
All right. Thanks all. Good night.